You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Saturday, and what a Saturday it was for the Michigan Wolverines. Absolutely annihilating Penn State 41-17, a game where Michigan never punted. Should have been a much more emphatic win than it even was, but I mean, it was an emphatic win. We're going to go over a Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hull, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group, and I have got my energy drink here. I'm going to be drinking this during the show here. It's 7 p.m. after a noon kick. I have been going strong, but I need some energy. So, not even going to hide it. We're just going to have it. Let's go over this big win. I mean, what a performance by the Wolverines. Let's start on some of the things that didn't go well, because a lot went well. So I want to nitpick on the things that didn't go well. My big concern is still the red zone offense. Because if it was not for the lack of conversions in the red zone, which led to field goals, that game would have been 21-0 instead of 13-0. Penn State would have been taken completely out of their offense that early. Michigan didn't settle for field goals except for one after that, I believe. So, when you look at it, the fact that Michigan didn't punt, I mean, that's an incredible thing in and of itself. I mean, it just really phenomenal. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what the score could have been. But Jake Moody was 4 for 4. So that's 28 yards rather, or 28 points instead of 12. I mean, so add 14 to that and you're looking at 55. 16. You're looking at 57. I don't know. My math is still off here, but well, they got a 2-point conversion, so 56. It really should have been something more like that. That tells you just how good Michigan was. That even though it was a 2-point lead at halftime, I mean, Michigan was absolutely annihilating Penn State as far as the stats were concerned. But the red zone, they got to be better, but things are still that good. I thought it was 412 yards, saying 418 yards looking at the stat broadcast from today. Rushing. J.J. McCarthy wasn't asked to do a heck of a lot. Didn't need to. 17 for 24. It's still 71% passing. 145 yards. One of the flukiest, weirdest interceptions ever. Couple penalties. Nothing crazy. Michigan dominated time of possession because Penn State could get nothing going. Outside of a 62-yard rush by Sean Clifford, that was about it. They got nothing else really going in the game. They held Sean Clifford to 37% passing, 120 yards on 19 attempts. And Drew Aller, the 5-star, 50% passing, 5 for 10. The talented freshman running backs everyone was so concerned with. Nick Singleton, 6 carries for 19 yards, an average of 3.2 yards a carry. Katron Allen, 6 carries for 16 yards and a touchdown, 2.7 yards per carry. Really didn't. Parker Washington, who normally has had some big games, didn't really show up, 3 for 33 yards. Brenton Strange, the tight end that everyone was so concerned about, 1 reception for 9 yards. This was a you-know-what kicking. Michigan absolutely annihilated Penn State in this one. Top 10 matchup against it's two coaches who have long been somewhat ridiculed for their inability to win top 10 matchups. James Franklin has been very bad on the road, just like Jim Harbaugh had been. Michigan obviously was ranked higher, so you would expect that. But, I mean, after the half, Michigan was like, we're done messing around. Back-to-back touchdowns. Donovan Edwards, long touchdown. 67-yarder. Blake Corum, 61-yarder after that. I mean, unbelievable. Donovan Edwards, really impressive. 16 carries, 173 yards. 2 touchdowns, averaging 10.8 yards per carry. Blake Corum, 28 carries, 166 yards, 5.9. Again, this was a defense. I want to remind you what their defense was, because it's still up until tomorrow. 5th in the country, allowing an average of 2.96 yards per carry. What did Michigan get? 7.6. I mean, they more than doubled their average. It was an incredible showing. And on top of that, I mean, it was funny to go and see what James Franklin said after the game, because everything he said was, he's like, oh, give them credit. But what do they say about what precedes the word but is rendered useless? You say the word but, everything you said before, right? It's like the Talladega Nights. You know, just because you say with all due respect doesn't mean that you can say whatever you want. James Franklin, give them credit, but we just didn't play well. No, you didn't play well because you got blown off the ball. And that's the funny part about the post game. Real braggadocious in a way, J.J. McCarthy and Donovan Edwards. J.J. McCarthy in particular, just very nonchalant about it, in the sense of, he's like, when we was asked, when did you know that Michigan's offensive line, your offensive line, was going to dominate this game? And he said, from the jump. And he's not wrong. That's the thing that makes it even more insane. Not wrong. Absolutely stellar performance by Michigan. The only other part that I have any qualms over, and I barely have one, Michigan only got 2 sacks in this game after having some real big sack numbers. Penn State was getting rid of the ball so fast. They were doing kind of similar to Michigan with a lot of screens and such. Michigan, I think, did the best it could do under those circumstances, right? So it's pretty phenomenal what Michigan was able to do in this one. 1 for 1 on 4th downs, 11 for 17 on 3rd downs. J.J. McCarthy, his legs came alive as we kind of expected they would. Didn't seem like he had some designed runs, but out of his 7 carries, I would like to say that 4 or 5 of them were just scrambles, recognizing on 3rd down, hey, I can run for a first. Pretty amazing. All right, we are going to continue here momentarily, but listen, from cringing at the pump to getting an eye-opening check at your favorite restaurant, inflation is hitting us all where it hurts, and it really hurts. That's why I started using Upside. Upside is an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. With every purchase, I'm earning cash back thanks to Upside. I mean, it was crucial on those road games, going all the way to Iowa, having to get gas multiple times there. Obviously, to and from Indianapolis, getting gas a little bit. One time there, one time back. Both at the same station. Ran into John Jansen at the gas station, by the way, on the way down there, which is funny because ran into Aiden Hutchinson's family on the way down to the Big Ten Championship game. I digress. To get started, download the free Upside app, use my promo code LOCKED, and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, claim an offer for whatever you are buying on Upside. Check in at the business pay as usual with a credit or debit card and get paid. In comparison to credit card renewals or loyalty programs, you can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside. Upside users are earning more than $1 million every week. That's probably why they have a 4.8 star rating on the App Store. Download the free Upside app and use the promo code LOCKED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more using promo code LOCKED. So lots of great things to take away. Obviously, Michigan didn't get its passing game going, really. Obviously, you want to see that happen because if you want to attract top quarterbacks and top wide receivers, you need to. But if you can win a game by rushing for 418 yards, just do that. This felt like a statement. And Jim Harbaugh said, yeah, call it a statement game. All right, then it's a statement game. It felt like a statement, and it felt like he was trying to make a statement because early when they were just really trying to pound it into the end zone for the first rushing touchdown, keeping in mind all their touchdowns were rushing touchdowns. But for the first one, it felt like there were opportunities to use the play action to do something else. And instead, it felt like Jim Harbaugh was like, no, we are going to get a rushing touchdown against this team. This was a statement in my eyes of You know we're going to run, and we're going to do it anyway. It's what we saw last year, but even more emphatic, because when you think about that Washington game, it was pretty good, right? It was like 300 yards or something like that. I don't remember the exact number, but I mean, it was pretty good. It wasn't that good. You know what I mean? It was 343 yards, average of 6.13 yards a carry. So, I mean, yeah. Again, the average per rush, 7.6. The only game that Michigan has had, they've only had 2 games in which that they've rushed better in the yards per carry performance in, 3 in the last 2 years here. You have Western Michigan last year, 7.79, Northern Illinois, 7.77, and then Hawaii, 8.12. Keeping in mind that even some of these other games, Iowa, they rushed pretty well, 4.1. Indiana, 4.1. Michigan went up against again, I can't state it enough. The number 5 rushing defense in the country. Now, we talked on Friday about why that might be a little bit of a skewed number, but they went up against a team that was considered to have a stellar rushing defense, and I expected it to be a challenge. Michigan is like, nah. You know, this is, again, how do you beat Ohio State? By being physical. They're going to be flashy. You just need to be physical. Penn State is like a weird hybrid between Ohio State and Michigan. They want to be flashy, and they're a little bit more physical. Michigan just out-physicaled Penn State to the nth degree. It was insane. And on top of that, Penn State was jawing. I guess not on the field, but they were in the tunnel. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have seen my video as of a couple minutes ago, and I want to double check this at this moment. It'll be much higher by the time that we get to, by the time that this is posted. But my personal video that I took in the tunnel has 658,000 views, and it was reposted also in some different forms with like Fox College Football's account took the Josh Pate video from the Ohio State game in the tunnel and spliced it with mine. And so, I mean, this has been viewed like 1 million times. And when we asked Mike Morris about it, he said Penn State was out there talking all week on social media, putting a finger up. I don't know what that means, but that's what they're saying. Said he went on to like a Michigan players Facebook Live talking about what they were going to do. And then they did nothing. They had 1 first down in halftime. I understand they were only down 2 points. 1 first down, hadn't been able to move the ball yet at all whatsoever. And that first down obviously was Sean Clifford's run. But they come out and they're talking in the tunnel. He said it was instigated by them. And then Michigan talks back, right? They're not going to back down. Then you see what happens. 2 for 2 on tunnel talks or tunnel altercations. It's probably not the place to do it if you're a road team, especially when the way I looked at it was the dam was going to break, right? At some point, Michigan was dominating them. It probably wasn't going to swing the other way. Certainly there was a possibility of it, but probably wasn't. They hadn't stopped Michigan to that point. There was no reason to think that they suddenly would. There was no part of them. The thing that I really like about what Michigan's done offensively, even though it might not be flashy, is that it has just been methodical. Michigan has just been absolutely methodical in marching down the field and getting what they want. But needs to be better in the red zone. Against Ohio State last year, 42-27, no field goals. Can't have that, right? Can't have field goals once you get to the end of the season. Last year, that was one of the things that this was an issue for Michigan last year. It's been an issue for Michigan seemingly year over year. They need to find a way to be consistent getting touchdowns. But they found a way in the second half to do it. I believe 1 field goal there in the second half. Otherwise, Might have been 2. I don't remember exactly. I'd have to look at the drive chart. But, I mean, otherwise, they just dominated everything. They allowed 111 rushing yards. 62 of those came on one run. Can't have that. But the rest of it looked great. And considering that Ohio State, because obviously that's what everyone's going to be looking at. Was this performance good enough to beat Ohio State? Yes, it was. Ohio State wouldn't have just 17 points, but Michigan did. Essentially, they didn't just slow down Penn State. They just stopped them in their tracks for the most part. But Michigan needs to be able to continue to do these things. And I think it's pretty telling that the most emphatic performance of the year comes against the best team they've played. This team is still that team that we all thought it was possible of being. That just because, it looked really good in the non-conference. They get into Big Ten play, and it's just whatever. Big Ten team comes to town, big game. This team shows up. And that's what I've kind of been saying. Against Iowa, they got to 20-0. That game was over in their minds. Would you like to see them continue to pile on? Yeah, but that's not what this team is like, generally. Against Indiana is what first quarter thing with Mike Hart. It's just going to be what it is. Which, by the way, how cool is it that Mike Hart, I did not expect him to be back. He's back. He's on the sidelines, and his guys get 418 rushing yards. Like, that is a heck of an amazing thing, right? His guys go out there and have an incredible game. It's his unit leading the charge. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. That's as cool of things that you're going to get. Okay, so what does all of this mean? We're going to continue talking just for a few more minutes here in our post-game Locked On Wolverines podcast. All right, next up is Michigan State. Michigan State, as I say this, is locked in a 21-21 battle with Wisconsin. With 33 seconds left to go, Michigan State has the ball. I don't know where they're at on the field. The TV's behind me. I have the 2 TV setups here for post-game. But whether Michigan State enters the Michigan game with a little confidence or not, I don't think it's going to matter because it sounds like Michigan State has all of Michigan's attention. That's what was constantly being said. It was talked about after the game, and Jim Harbaugh, after the game, said Blake Corum didn't even want to talk about beating Penn State. Didn't want to talk about 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. He didn't want to talk about any of that. He said he wanted to congratulate his offensive line, but he kept on saying in the tunnel, on to Michigan State. Coach, on to Michigan State. That's where they're at. Both teams have a bye week. And if Michigan comes out like this, it's going to be impossible for MSU to do much of anything. Now, I'm sure they've probably got some things saved up. I can't imagine it's going to be this easy, right? It can't be. Michigan coming off an emotional win against Penn State and all, but you can't have the letdown. I don't think that they will. I think if the game was next week, there's certainly the possibility. But this had to be the type of game where any other team had to be that faces Michigan this year, had to be watching this kind of shaking in their boots. Because Penn State, while I think was overrated and won all the games on its schedule, and Michigan made them look pedestrian. Michigan made Penn State look the way that Penn State made Auburn look, but even worse in a lot of ways. And I think Penn State has a good chance of being a 10-2 team. And, Ohio State's the only other team on that schedule that I say is for sure another loss. Now, they have some other tough games, Minnesota, I believe, is on their schedule. Minnesota, who just lost to Illinois. Illinois might be the next difficult matchup. It's the week before Ohio State. Tommy DeVito's playing. I mean, that's a pretty good football team. That said, right now it looks like we're on a collision course to 11-0 going into the Ohio State game. If Michigan can just put it all together, and that's the other good thing is I feel like we had seen games where Michigan had things a little bit more buttoned up, a little bit more put together last year. Maryland, Ohio State, of course, Iowa. I feel like that was more Michigan really in a stride. And while there were things like punts and, letting up some touchdowns and things of that nature in those games, it felt like Michigan had more control than it even did in a game like this when Michigan had utmost control. So I want to see them feel a little less young. That's the way I think of it. It feels like they're young in a way, and they are. But it feels like they are growing, and that's the kind of the thing that we heard from Jim Harbaugh. That's a good thing. Michigan's able to go out and do this while they're still growing. That's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that is a bad thing. They are figuring things out and are maturing on the fly. You've got 4 more games before Ohio State, and that's hard to that's kind of unbelievable that we're already at that point. Michigan State, Rutgers, Nebraska, and Illinois. Take care of business. Figure out what you're about. Learn how to finish when it comes to on a drive-by-drive basis. And you very well could go into Columbus and get a win. This team is not scared of anyone. They do not bow down to anyone. Let the Ohio State people sit there and think that it's going to be an absolute blowout because that's what they want when Michigan comes to town. I'm not seeing that. Penn State has a very capable run and pass game, and Michigan absolutely made it look stupid today. 268 yards total. Michigan managed 563 yards. That's elite level stuff against a very good team that probably will be in a New Year's Six Bowl. Maybe it won't. Maybe it's more fool's gold. But I don't think it is. So we are seeing the continuation of it. It looks really good. Very excited about where this team is headed. All right. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back on Monday. We'll don't know if we have press conferences and stuff. We are in bye week. 2 weeks until Michigan State. I don't know if I'm ready for that. I'm ready for the Michigan State game. I don't know if I'm ready for bye week. But that's where we're at. All right. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching and or listening. Peace.